Dawkins colorful and I'm white. It's too bright in here, I think. Let me turn down the... Oh, yeah, baby. Boom, chicka, boom. No, that's... What shade of white do you want me? I gotta match Richard Dawkins. I mean, he's looking good. How old is he? Is he like 75? I'm guessing. Someone put in the live stream chat how old Richard Dawkins is. I got my brightness turned down to 1%. Look what happens if I go like, whoa. That's how much light I have in this room. I got too much light. Contrast. Yeah, there we go. Let's turn this down a bit. That should work. Something like that. Oh, I saw Taylor Swift the other day. Man, that woman is powerful. She has the power to sell out 70,000 stadium, if you include the floor, twice, 2 days in a row. She single-handedly caused traffic accidents in the Phoenix area and on I-10 on the way to Phoenix. I know, I wasn't in the accident, but I saw, I mean, traffic jams, traffic accidents. She probably doubled the economy in at least Glendale area for that weekend. And I did a little math when I was sitting, you know, most of the young kids, oh, I got so much to say about this. Young kids were screaming. I had to put Kleenex in my ears because I forgot the earplugs. But while I was sitting there observing the species called teenage females, there was a lot of gay guys there too. Not me though. I'm not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but I'm not gay. Trust me. $5 to $10 million, I calculated she netted for herself, after the manager, everything, 5 to 10 million. I'll say 5 to be conservative, based on average ticket sales and merch and all that stuff. And I mean, it was so packed. My daughter and I could not move in the area around the stadium. I've been to a couple of Arizona Cardinal games, and it was nothing compared to Taylor Swift. The amount of people and the crowds. And I noticed something else. And I don't know if I should say this because it's very judgy. It's very judgy. But I looked around and I saw 80% female, and dare I say 80% obesity, and a good 50% just flat out weirdness. And I tell you, Taylor Swift has the exact opposite business model that I have. My business model is to look at you guys in the live stream chat and tell you point blank, you're not special. You're not. You might be special to a handful of people in the world, but on the planet as a whole, Ethio, Mitesh, Alarian, Jerome, JNW, I mean, none of you guys are special. You might think you are, but you're not. I'm not special, you're not special. But Taylor Swift has this business model of making people feel special. Oh, and it's powerful. It's like a religion. It's very similar to Christianity. And she, like a couple points in the show, talked to these young girls about how special they are. And they're willing to throw money at her to hear that they're special. That even though some of them will never probably ever get a date. Oh, that's harsh. It's true though. It's harsh but true. And this is a good segue into Richard Dawkins. So let me cut to the chase. Richard Dawkins is one of these new atheists from the early 2000s, 2005, 2010-ish, a decade ago. Remember the new atheists? And I'm here to propose to you that Richard Dawkins is more effective still than a lot of you woke atheists out there. You know why? Because he tells the truth. And he's not worried, he's not scared to go against his own tribe. He doesn't care if atheists don't like him. Just like he's like me. Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe, well, it's a combination of things. It's age, wisdom, um, but it's also that he's probably doesn't suffer from any mental illness. He probably was raised in a good home with a mother and a father. And a lot of you woke atheists out there have been diagnosed with a mental illness. Not to say it's your fault, but I'm just stating the facts. Diagnosed with a mental illness, have been abused, was raised by one parent. And I think you take a combination of these things, you get woke atheists. Now, what is a woke atheist? Well, I'm glad you asked. And yes, the mustache is gone. It's not gone. I decided to shave most of it off, and then as you can tell, I'm scruffy all around. I'm going to go for the full beard now and see what that looks like. But can someone help me in the live stream chat? Type in, everybody can do this, in one short sentence. Tell me, what is the definition of woke? I'm here to say there isn't a definition. I mean, well, no, let me put it this way. There isn't one definition. There's a ton of definitions. For me, when I think of woke, especially as an adjective in front of the word atheist, I think of feel sorry forism. I think of some followers of critical race theory. I think of victimhood. I think of postmodernism. These are some of the key buzzwords that come to my head. And I'll be very honest and frank, all those words I don't like. So if someone comes up to me and says they're a woke atheist, I immediately have a negative impression on you because of these definitions in my head. You could be exact opposite to because you have a different definition of woke. But I'm just being honest with you. I don't like you if you tell me you're a woke atheist, because I think then you're probably mentally ill. You probably suffer from a disease called feel sorry forism, where empathy and compassion can blind you like nothing else can. You probably need to feel special and belong in a tribe and a community where you feel safe. And to me, this is all revolting. You probably value people's feelings over truth. To me, this is revolting. You probably are a postmodernist. To me, this is revolting. You probably adhere to some ideas of critical race theory. To me, this is revolting. Not to say we can't have a friendly conversation, but I'm just being honest with you. My gut instinct with wokeness is revulsion. It's terrible. And Richard Dawkins is not that. And even if you disagree with everything I'm saying right now, I think you might agree with this. A lot of conservative evangelical Christians, not even evangelical, a lot of conservative Roman Catholics, they're listening to me right now and they're agreeing with me. They have this severe revulsion against you as well. And so when they hear Richard Dawkins say some of the things he says, and I'll play this. I haven't listened to this. I've listened to like maybe a minute of it, but I know where he's coming from. They are more likely to look at Richard Dawkins and like him over some of you woke atheists. These Christians and Muslims too. They might disagree with Richard Dawkins and say, no, you're wrong here, here, and here. But they say, at least we know where he stands and he values truth. But some of you flag-waving woke atheists, it's like, no, people's feelings are more important. So, if you agree with that Richard Dawkins is going to appeal to a lot more Christians than you woke atheists will, then you kind of agree with me that he's going to be more effective, because they don't have this immediate revulsion to Richard Dawkins as they would to some of you woke atheists. And again, I'm defining woke as those words, those buzzwords, which, I could be wrong. Well, no, I can't be wrong. This is my definition, mine. Little postmodernist for you. Okay, what are some of the definitions? Woke equals witch hunters. Ooh. Aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues. Oh, that seems so nice and noble. Woke just means progressive at this point, so I guess every atheist that is liberal is woke. Yeah, I can see that, Jerome. Icy Pirate, woke, politically liberal, as in matters of racial and social justice. Yep. JNW, the acceptance of others people's definition of reality, despite the fact it's clearly not true, all in an effort to gain acceptance from others because you have a mental problems yourself. Was that to me? Was that to me? Hey, I've been tested. My mother had me tested. I'm fine. Well, that's your problem. You need to be strong and overcome your revulsion. Well, that's an interesting question. Point. You need to overcome your revulsion. How do you overcome the revulsion to the smell of soured milk? Is it possible? How can you... I don't like the smell of laying hen poop. How do you overcome that revulsion? Like these primitive revulsions, like even two men kissing, I'm repulsed. And I bet you two gay men could be listening to me right now and say, yeah, I don't blame you because you're a heterosexual man. The two gay men could say, I'm repulsed when I see you kiss your wife. Ugh, icky. We all have these different revulsions, and they're so primal. Now, maybe on some things you can, through, like if I wake up every morning and I smell soured milk, and I do that for a full year, can I overcome that revulsion? I don't know. Maybe. I want to rip my hair out every time someone says woke now. Neek, you see? Okay, let's listen to Richard Dawkins. And the reason why I'm even playing this is because I saw on Twitter, what's the friendly atheist guy, Hemet? He said, this is a hill that Richard Dawkins is willing to die on, the hill of, I think they're going to talk about trans issues. And this is a hill that he's willing to die on. Well, he's not going to die on this hill. The vast majority of the Western, well, at least the American population, I think agree with Richard Dawkins and what he's saying. 60 to 80% of people say, when it comes to the trans issue, that the sex assigned at birth is correct and it shouldn't be changed later, and that there's only two sexes. These are the things that Richard Dawkins says. Because it's true. Like when it comes to the biology of how many sexes there are, is he an evolutionary biologist or just biologist? Richard Dawkins, like, you got to follow the science. He's one of the leading scientists in the world in this area, and if he says there's two sexes, shouldn't we follow the science? No, because it hurts people's feelings.
Scientist Richard Dawkins, one-on-one. Piers Morgan on set controversing rod for controversy.
I despise people who believe something without evidence and then go out and take action which damages other people.
His 2006 blockbuster, The God Delusion, made him a global face of atheism.
What's wrong with, in your opinion, with believing
I've
in
never read The God Delusion. As you know, I don't read books, but I haven't even read parts of it. Well, maybe I have online.
God, regardless of who the God is?
I think it's false. I think that it's a matter of belief without evidence.
While his combative style has created fervent admirers and ferocious enemies. To his fans, he's the whip-smart scientist who's waging war.
Deus Ex Machina asks, who says there's more than two sexes? I just talked to a person a few weeks ago named, what was her name? She thought, she actually didn't even believe in dysmorphia. She was a trans woman who said that both gender and sex is on a distribution. So she could, does that mean it's infinite? I mean...
War for facts over feelings.
Science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can
To his critics, he's incendiary, out of touch, and deliberately offensive. Well, tonight, he's here, and he's uncensored. And Richard Dawkins joins me now. Richard Dawkins, thank you very much indeed for agreeing to appear on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Pleasure.
I assume you will be uncensored.
Of course.
You've never been censored, have you?
No.
In fact, people have tried to censor you, and we're going to come to a bit of that later on. This cancel culture has even come to your door. What do you make of that? People these days not wanting to hear opinions they don't like.
I think it's very sad. I think, especially in universities, where I spent all my life, universities are places where you should be free to speak your mind, listen, even to something that you don't like. And it's very tragic that universities seem to have bought into the idea that if you don't like what you think you're going to hear from somebody, you should shut them up and refuse to let them speak.
Yeah, I mean, I find it completely baffling that at a place of education where the whole point is to test your own thought processes and to deliberately be exposed to other thoughts, we're now in a place where a lot of students feel they just don't want to hear it. They only want to hear stuff that validates their own opinion.
They use this word safe. They want to feel safe. And university is the one place where you should not feel safe.
Yes,
certainly
it should
not
be
intellectually
dangerous.
safe. Yes, exactly.
In terms of thinking,
Yes.
You know, I just think you want to be...
That's a good point. University, out of all the places you can be on planet Earth, you should feel the most uncomfortable at university, where your ideas are being challenged. You don't feel safe.
Constantly challenged and provoked about what you believe and what you think.
You ought to be physically safe, but
Yes.
intellectually you should be challenged.
Oh, yeah. See, here's another big difference between me and a lot of, I guess, woke liberals is I make a huge distinction between physical safety and mental safety. Whereas I think a woke liberal would not make that as big a distinction as I do. Like, don't get me wrong. I think you can harm people with your words and make them cry. But I would say that when we figure out what is true and what is not, challenging ideas, concepts, oftentimes this makes people feel uncomfortable and often do cry. It causes negative emotions. And I'm saying, but that is for the greater good often. Or at least sometimes. I'm not talking about just calling people bad names for no reason. I'm talking saying things that someone truly believes and it hurts someone else when they hear it. But for other people, they can hear the same thing and it doesn't hurt them. So then I place more of the responsibility, more of the blame on the victim. Oh, I love saying that because I know it causes people to just like, did Doug just say blame the victim? Well, yeah, I did. Sometimes the victim is at fault because they made themselves the victim. Some of you probably still can't believe I just said that. Or does everybody understand what I'm saying? Do I need to explain myself? That sometimes people purposely make themselves the victim so that people will feel sorry for them. And that people don't make any effort to have a thicker skin, and that they can hear certain words and it doesn't bother them. How can someone say a sentence, utter a phrase, and it causes someone to cry and another person not to cry? How can you blame the person who uttered that sentence? Isn't the responsibility of how it's taken on the person who heard it and received it. So that's what I mean by blame the victim. My sorries are getting better. I don't know. Do you guys prefer I say sorry like a Canadian or sorry like an American?
I'm going to come more to this because I think the whole cancel culture, woke kind of world we live in is a fascinatingly disturbing one, and you've got strong views on it. But I want to start, because you're known as one of the world's big thinkers, I want to start with some big theme stuff. And I guess there's no bigger theme than evolution itself. And I think I'd ask a question like this. What do we know now about where we've come from? And what don't we know?
Okay. We know once you've got a self-replicating entity, which nowadays is DNA, but it wasn't originally, once you've got life started, once natural selection, Darwinian natural selection has got going, then we pretty much understand the 4 billion year history of what's given rise to us and all other living creatures. We don't know how it started, and that's still a mystery, and it may always be a mystery, because
God.
And we may never know exactly what did happen. We know the kind of thing it had to be.
What kind of thing do you think it was?
It was the origin of a self-replicating molecule, a molecule that makes copies of itself. DNA is such a molecule, but the original one was almost certainly not DNA, because DNA is what's been called a high-tech replicator. There had to be a precursor to DNA. Something, the laws of chemistry gave rise to a molecule which had this unusual property.
Who's getting their feelings hurt at drag shows and trying to ban them? I know some of you might be interested in the chemical evolution and the biological evolution here, but I'm not too interested in it. The drag show thing, I bet you if you were to poll the parents of these schools, do you want this to happen or not? The vast majority would say no. I think what the whole point of the drag show thing is to make it more socially acceptable, different lifestyles, transvestites, trans, and so forth. For me, it is, to me, it's disgusting. Okay, it's revulsion. It's like smelling soured milk. I think most drag show queens are ugly and obese. And I think it's on purpose because they don't want it to be too sexual for kids. So they're purposely like, it's not that sexual when they're ugly and obese. And so I find it revolting for that reason. But to be honest, I've only seen them on YouTube, and I don't know if that's a representative sample, but a lot of them that I've seen are just like muffin tops. Like I'm revulsed when I see it on the street, even if it's not a trans or a transvestite show or whatever. But the thing is, you would never have a woman or a man who's not a transvestite or trans doing the same things, would you? So why transvestite? It's so people feel. I think the motives are good, that they don't want people to kill these people when they grow up and become adults. So they want to personalize it and say, oh, here's a real person who's reading you a story. Aren't they nice? And aren't they, a real person that you shouldn't hate? That's, I think, to steel man them.
It's because, like I say, a human brain can't comprehend nothingness or what may have come before nothingness. We can't. We're not able to extrapolate what that is, right? I mean, no scientist can explain nothingness, can they? Plausibly.
Well, maybe they can't. You'd have to talk to a physicist. But even
could you explain it?
No, I'm not a physicist. But
you're a very smart guy, and you're a very vehement atheist.
No, I'm not. I'm not that vehement.
Well, you're pretty vehement. I mean, you just think all belief in all gods is ludicrous, right?
I think that it doesn't help to introduce complexity at the outset. That's my point.
No, I get that, but
no, well, I don't think you do get it.
Well, no, I do, because but you're asking me to consider that my own belief in a deity that may be above human thinking and understanding and brain power, that was there universally, that my theory is scientifically flawed. Whereas I would throw back at you, okay, but I need to be given an alternative. I need some scientist somewhere to explain to me, right, 4 billion years. All right, but then what was there before that?
Well, scientists can't answer that, and what they say is things like it's like going north of the North Pole. I'm sure. I gather you recently introduced Stephen Hawking. He probably said that to you.
Yeah, he did actually. Yeah.
But the point is this: science can.
Pine Creek would find all Shakespeare's plays revolting when they were first performed. I probably would, and I was forced to read some Shakespeare in high school, and I hated Shakespeare. I, for the life of me, don't understand why people thought Shakespeare was great. I think Quentin Tarantino is 1,000 times better than Shakespeare.
You don't know, though, do you?
Of course I don't. Scientists take a pride in admitting what they don't know. And they don't know what happened before the Big Bang. They don't even admit that the word before means anything with respect to the Big Bang. Physicists will tell you.
But it has to. I mean,
Well, it doesn't, because that's a naive statement. Physicists will say that you do not have to say there was a time began at the Big Bang, is what some physicists will say.
Yeah, but you can think of time sequentially. Like, I understand what he's saying, but I have no problem as an atheist saying there was a time when there was no universe, no our reality. I think it's totally fine to say, to imagine or to think about what happened before the Big Bang, what was existing before the Big Bang, before the Big Bang, before our time existed, because I'm viewing time sequentially as a timeline, but not seconds, hours, dates, just of events. But I do get why physicists say that, because they're saying there was no time before the Big Bang, so therefore you can't say before. Yeah, you still can.
Yeah, but to which I immediately respond with my basic human brain. Well, okay, if time began, when did it begin?
Well, quite.
And what was there before?
Quite.
Which is a fairly obvious question.
It is a very obvious question. It's too obvious, and physicists will tell you that you're being naive.
Yeah, but they don't know why I'm being naive, because they can't provide any actual scientific
as you've
evidence.
just said, the human brain is not capable of grasping.
Pine Creek is born from the Christian ethos when he expresses revulsion against transvestites. I said ugly ones. Ugly ones. I have revulsion against muffin tops. I love clothes. I think the vast majority of the world are repulsive if they were naked. I'm serious. I love the fact that we humans develop clothes to cover the revulsion of the nakedness. Maybe 20% of the world look okay naked, and then maybe 5% or less look really good naked. So I'm not born from the Christian ethos when it expresses revulsion. I would say the Christian ethos is borrowing from our natural genetic inclinations or revulsions. In other words, I'm saying it's more primal than religion, and that a lot of the revulsions religious people have are not because of their religion. It's because of their genetics, because of hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution. We have evolved this way to have these revulsions.
Right, that's my point.
Yes.
So why is it not possible that there is a superior being, power, which many people believe in different
It's
ways?
possible there are
different
fairies
types
at the bottom of the garden. I mean, all sorts of things are possible. you can't deny that.
Well, except I've never seen fairies in the garden, have you?
No, you've never seen God either.
No, but you don't know for sure that either doesn't exist.
No, I don't know that fairies don't exist. Fairies may be leprechauns, for all I know.
Do you accept, have you got milder about this as you've got older?
Yes.
Have you got more accepting that you may be wrong? Less certain?
Well, yes, of course, a scientist may always be wrong, and that's definitely a thing that a scientist has to say. But I'm not vehement. You're provoking me to be vehement because you're taking that tone with me.
Well, you've been provoked before.
Yes.
And you've been quite vehement in response. I'm actually not trying to provoke you. I'm genuinely curious.
Yes.
Because I don't have all the answers, but I'm always sceptical of people who think they do. I don't think you do.
Absolutely not.
But your admission that you don't have all the answers, to me, is quite interesting, because it lends the possibility you might be wrong.
Well, it's not interesting. I mean, no scientist has all the answers. But the one thing you shouldn't say is that because I don't know, therefore God did it. That's a
What do you think happens when you die?
As Bertrand Russell said, I believe that when I die, I shall rot, and nothing of my ego shall remain.
That's it.
Yes.
The end. Nothing. There's nothing else.
How could it be otherwise? I mean, you have a brain, an evolved brain, which works by nerve impulses, and when that decays, what could possibly be left?
So you don't believe in, for example, a spirit or a soul? None of that that's all conditional entirely on a link to an actual cerebral...
I don't understand why Piers Morgan's asking these types of questions. Like, most people who are interested enough to watch this interview already know a little bit of Richard Dawkins and know all these answers. Right?
A tunnel of light at the end.
Yeah, so, I mean, it could be, couldn't it?
Yes, well, read Susan Blackmore on that.
Would you like to be pleasantly surprised, or would you be appalled if you were wrong?
Well, I would be pleasantly surprised for a while. I don't think I'd like to live for all eternity, would you? Would you get...
I don't know, it depends what it's like.
Well...
If eternity was watching, cricket at Lord's all day and watching Arsenal win every weekend, yes, give me that.
Really?
Well, if eternity is blissful and a wonderful experience, as some people believe...
I think there is something actually rather frightening about eternity. And I'd be quite glad to be spending it under a general anaesthetic.
Do you fear, given the finality of what you think death to be, do you fear it as you get older?
I fear the process of dying, but when you're dead, you don't know anything. It's just like before you were born. I think it was Mark Twain said, I was dead for billions of years before I was born and never suffered the smallest inconvenience.
But when you have loved ones who've died, for example...
That's tragic.
Yeah, but how do, as somebody who...
By the way, I did get too much sun the other day. Before the Taylor Swift concert, I went to the Live Golf tournament and got a lot of sun. But again, I'm trying to match myself with Richard Dawkins on his complexion, and I'm failing.
Comfort from their belief in God that there is a different life out there.
Yes, they do.
You don't have that sucker at all.
No.
So is it incredibly painful? More for you, perhaps, than somebody
I don't think so.
who is a believer?
Let me put it to you this way. If you really did believe it, wouldn't you say to the person on the deathbed, looking forward to seeing you in purgatory?
A lot of people say, looking forward to seeing you in another life, yeah.
Yes.
A lot of people say that.
You don't really believe it, though.
Actually, I do. Yeah, I do, actually. Because I find it, when I think about it in big picture, which is your great thing, I think, how likely is it that we just got put on this planet, Earth, as human beings, as a one-off kind of entity that existed here, and then you die and that's it. And it only lasted 4 billion years, and before that was absolutely nothing at all. How likely is that to have been the case? I don't think that's likely.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely, so I'm going to believe in another unlikely thing that I'll live forever after I die.
My human brain, which is limited, does not think that is likely.
I think it's very likely. I think
Really?
It's exactly what happened, yes.
We are a tiny, tiny dot in the universe, right?
Exactly.
So you don't know what else is out there, really, other than what scientists have already established.
No, I think it's highly likely that there are other beings out there which are much cleverer than we are. Superhuman, not supernatural, but superhuman. And I would love to meet them. I probably couldn't understand what they said.
We're going to take a short break. I want to come back and I want to talk to you about where we are in the world right now, which I think we can reach points of agreement here about the cancel culture, wokery, and what it's doing to us as human beings. About Richard Dawkins.
Oh, yeah. The interesting part's coming up now.
Canada produced a list of 24 harmful terms. These included male, female, man, woman, mother, and father. They recommended using phrases like sperm producing, egg producing, XY, XX.
Yeah, see, this is why they're losing. Who are they? I'm not going to say right now, but they are losing. They're losing this argument. They're losing this fight. They're losing the public opinion. If you can't say father, mother, woman, man, and you have to say egg producer, sperm producer, I mean... This is not a good tactic if you want to change people's minds, whoever they are, if that's their goal. This is a horrible tactic.
Individual. And they should be used to avoid reinforcing societally imposed ideas of a sex binary. To which your response was, the only possible response is contemptuous ridicule.
Yes.
Which I cheered, I have to say, because it was complete madness. How have we come to this?
English is my native language, is your native language, and I propose to use it in the way that I have always used it, and I'm not going to be censored by... Have you looked at those people? They look like teenagers.
Well, it's just, what's extraordinary to me is they want to, what they call degender and neutralise language, but they're doing it from a completely false pretext that you can somehow pretend biology doesn't exist, particularly when it comes to someone's sex. I mean, it's incontrovertible. There's no...
That crackling sound in the background, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's not me, it's this, which is weird.
Vast swathes of the way society talks and is allowed to talk.
It's bullying. And we've seen the way J.K. Rowling has been bullied, Kathleen Stock has been bullied. They've stood
Actually, you know what? That's a great way to put it. It's bullying. Because this is something that would resonate with, I define, if you came late, I defined what woke means to me. A lot of the woke culture, woke atheists, they can understand what bullying is. And so if you use these words back on them, that you are the bullies, you are actually causing harm to children. I mean, this impacts them. They'll disagree with you, of course, but maybe, just maybe, they'll think, well, maybe I am being a bully here. Maybe I am doing harm to children.
But it's very upsetting the way this tiny minority of people has managed to capture the discourse and to really talk arrant nonsense.
What's the answer to it?
Science. I mean, there are two sexes. You can talk about gender if you wish, and that's a subjective. I'm not.
But when people say there are 100 genders, for example.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that. As a biologist, there are two sexes, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, there are two sexes. That's all there is to it. There's intersex, which is the combination of those two sexes in different degrees. Gender is basically the degree of masculinity, what we call masculinity and femininity. It's maybe personality type. It's maybe proclivities. But what's wrong with saying there's only two sexes? Like, even if he's wrong, what's so bad at saying, if someone says, no, I'm non-binary, I'm not one of the sexes, and you just say, no, you're wrong. If you say you're non-binary, you're wrong. What's wrong with saying that? Telling someone that they're wrong? Because I think some of the woke atheists will say to Richard Dawkins, no, you're wrong. And Richard Dawkins says back to him, no, you're wrong. And then, na. Let's just say everybody's wrong. How do we solve this conundrum? Let's say we didn't care about people's feelings for a second. How would we solve this problem? Are there only two sexes or not? Wouldn't we look to the biology? Wouldn't we? Like, putting feelings aside. Who cares if people cry and commit suicide? We just want to know what's true. By the way, on the suicide thing, I recently changed my mind on this because, I don't know, half a year ago, I thought when it came to the transgender issue, they were a group of people who had a high chance of commit suicide. Turns out I was wrong. Did you know that's false? That the actual number of suicides, number one, you can't really find that data. And number two, you can sort of find the data of the total suicides and make some assumptions. And you'll get an answer that in the United States of America of 350 million, I've done some number crunching on this, and others have as well, and nobody can get over 100. Did you know this? That there's probably less than 100 suicides from trans people in all of the United States? So even though trans people can have depression and maybe consider suicide or maybe even attempt suicide, they really suck at actually doing it, which is encouraging. That if you're a mother or father and you have a trans kid, statistics show that they're actually probably not going to commit suicide. You can fact check me on this, and I bet you're not going to find anything that says the statistics on actual transgender suicides. I dare anyone to try to find it. And I would, for all you conservative atheists in here who are not woke, and you're talking about this issue, ask them, well, how many people, and if this thing of suicide comes up, ask them how many trans suicides was there in the United States in 2022, 2021? They can't answer it. They don't want to answer it, I don't think, because I think they know it's extremely low. And then, just like the martyrdom in Christianity, you got to show that they committed suicide because of being trans and not, I don't know, doing drugs or something, or some other mental disorder.
You had a Humanist Award stripped in 2021 because of your comments about this kind of thing. You had a tweet in April of that year. In 2015, you tweeted, Rachel Dolezal, a white chapter president in America of the NAACP, was vilified for identifying as black. She was white. Some men choose to identify as women, some women choose to identify as men. You'll be vilified if you deny that they literally are what they identify as. Discuss. And all hell broke loose and you had your award stripped because you were effectively doing what J.K. Rowling and others have said. You were just espousing a biological fact.
I wasn't even doing that. I was asking people to discuss. Discuss. That's what I've done all my life in universities.
Why have we lost that ability to actually have an open and frank debate?
I'll tell you why. Because people who don't have good arguments, they will tend to lean towards feelings. In fact, they will tend to say things like, no, you can't talk to me. You are X, Y, or Z, so shut up. If they had good arguments, I don't think they would silence people or try to silence people. So it's very dangerous once you put this whole idea of people's mental well-being above truth. Because if you did put people's mental well-being above truth, I mean, you would have to outlaw anti-apologists, anti-Christian, anti-Muslim apologetic channels because you're affecting their mental well-being. Jesus Christ lives in them, their personal savior. Allah, the Most High God, powerful ruler, one and only, one true God. And you're saying these things about him? Very disheartening.
There are people for whom the word discuss doesn't mean discuss. It means you've taken a position, which I hadn't. But anyway, I thought it was a reasonable thing to discuss. This was, on the one hand, I actually wrote a couple of follow-up articles to this. Race is actually a much more fluid concept than sex. For one thing, many people are of mixed race, and so they really can be,
Well, I had my DNA done, for example,
Yes.
properly tested. It came back, I had 0 English DNA, 0. I actually have 6% Middle Eastern.
Yes.
For example,
Yes.
right? So that was a shock to me. I had no idea.
Yes.
A lot of Celt, a lot of Irish and Scottish and Welsh.
Yes.
But no English whatsoever.
Yes. Well, we're all mixed, and therefore it actually is a perfectly reasonable thing for somebody to identify as some particular race if they want to. But sex is not like that. Sex really is binary, and therefore it's certainly worth discussing that odd anomaly, which I pointed out in that.
You know, the thing is, I think, I don't know what percentage, but there's probably a large percentage of trans people who agree with Richard Dawkins here. There's 2 sexes, but I have dysmorphia. I was born a biological man, but identify as a woman because I feel more feminine or whatever reason they say. But they would agree with Richard Dawkins. Like, is there any trans people listening right now? In the live stream or in the comments, you can type in, if you watch the replay, yeah, I'm trans and I agree with Richard Dawkins. There's only 2 sexes. In fact, do I dare say most trans people would say this?
We now have a situation where in women's sport, for example, transgender athletes are destroying women's records and beating women in women's sport, by immeasurable distances.
We don't disagree about this. There's no. But we don't.
Right.
You know.
I mean, it seems to me complete madness, just scientific madness that we're allowing this to happen.
It is.
Yeah, and again, this is another example putting feelings over facts. An average male athlete could crush a professional female athlete in a particular sport. Most sports. There's probably a few sports where that might not be true. And so once you have this natural advantage from birth, in terms of muscle mass, lung capacity, you name it, even if you can find counterexamples, here's my solution, here's my answer. Make it simple. If you were born with a penis, you're a man. If you're not, you're a woman. And sure, there's going to be intersex problems, and there are intersex athletes out there. But intersex is such a small percentage of even the trans community, a minute percentage. Just make a very simple rule, and that's that. And guess what? There's going to be a certain percentage of the trans community who will cry and be sad. And I'm here to say that's better than a larger percentage of females who are going to be sad. Someone's going to be sad. Right? Someone's going to be sad, no matter what. Well, let's lower the total net suffering and make the biological females less sad. Oh, so harsh. So harsh, Doug. In other words, I'm saying it's okay for the few, the minute. I mean, in this big scope of the world, how many trans athletes are there? I mean, it's so incredibly small. Like, we can buy them a box of Kleenex and they can cry in their bedrooms. And we know the statistics are that they're probably not going to commit suicide. They'll just be sad. Ooh, I'm being so harsh. I mean, I'm beyond cancelable at this point, right? But the thing is, I'd say the vast majority of the planet agree with me. Well over 50% on this issue. But very few people have the guts to actually just come out and say it like that. It's okay if some trans people cry. It's okay if it's even unfair to them.
One of the problems that scientists have, and we saw this in the COVID pandemic, is that scientists, by definition, they evolve positions according to changing facts. And we saw in the pandemic that originally the perceived scientific wisdom was that masks, for example, would be ineffective in preventing the spread of COVID. Then they changed their mind about that. We were told that the vaccines would stop passing on the virus, and it turned out that wasn't true. We were told, there's been a whole debate, as you know, about where the virus may have started. The belief was from a wet market. Maybe it was from this lab in Wuhan and so on. Those who are anti-science, they leap on these things and they say, well, there you go. There you go. Why should we believe or follow the science when they do such dramatic U-turns in a health crisis, for example? What do you say to that?
Well, it's true. I mean, science actually does change its mind because I think it was John Maynard Keynes said, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?
Yes.
And so this all happened in such a hurry. It was all a great rush to produce advice, and there wasn't time to take the normal, balanced look at the evidence.
And the thing is, why was there this need to rush on decisions, not just the vaccines, but other issues? It's because of the fear of death. Fear, emotion, feelings. Tell ya, bad decisions result when you start relying on your fears and feelings. But we evolved with these fears and feelings for a reason, and sometimes it can actually save our lives. But I think within a few months of when COVID-19 hit, we knew it was affecting mostly old people. Everything would have been different if it was affecting kids under the age of 15, let's say. Then I would say, yeah, definitely everybody would be shut down everything. I mean, let's protect our children. what, old people? And in hindsight, the whole replicating and mutating of the virus ended up being a good thing. In a way, it was a greater good that it did spread faster, because then it mutated into a less harmful variant. Ugh. So many mistakes made.
Naturally.
And the thing is, there's still people today who are just living in fear. Their anxieties are high. They got depression because of being isolated for so long. There's still, I'd say, I don't know, what do you guys think? 2% of people walking around with masks on who didn't prior. Now, some of them might have good reason, like they have a pre-existing condition or whatever. But I bet you a good chunk of that 2% are walking around with masks on because they just, it's all up here. It's a mental anxiety issue. This fear of death is so high in them. And I bet you a lot of them are atheists too, because if they were Christians who truly believe, they go, oh, to die is gain. I get to go to heaven. Like, take that mask off.
They change their mind. And it's a virtue of science, actually, that they can change their mind. Scientists can change their mind.
What is not a virtue is that social media allows large groups of people to whip each other up into a sort of lava of self-righteous certainty about positions, which can actually, in a pandemic, for example, be deadly to people.
I quite agree.
I mean, if the wrong types of people who are most vulnerable to, say, a COVID virus, if they believe this stuff and don't, for example, get what was pretty extensively seen to be a pretty safe vaccine in most cases, could kill them.
Yes.
What do you think about that new phenomenon in society, social media creating these kind of
It is
rabbit
interesting.
holes?
It interests me a lot, actually, because there was a time when you could express your opinion by writing a letter to the newspaper, and chances are it would be not accepted by the editor.
But that was it. That was the only way you could communicate.
Now anybody can do it, and so it is actually possible for the sort of people who write graffiti on walls to reach the world if they get the.
Do you like social media?
No, I don't. On the whole, I use them, but I don't like them.
Why?
Because there's a culture of nastiness. There's a culture of hostility. A culture of.
Whoa! Now that's saying something coming from him, right, Christians? He doesn't like social media because of the nastiness, and he's the guy who wrote the God Delusion. Bit of irony there. I don't know how much more of this I want to play. Can I identify as 12 and play in a little league? Can I identify as handicapped and compete in a Special Olympics? Yeah, Thomas Paine, you can come up with all these scenarios. I was thinking of one the other day, like when it comes to the trans issue and transitioning, and I think there's laws in Florida now that says you can't give hormones to kids, definitely can't do surgery with kids, that type of law. And maybe woke parents are moving out of Florida now and going to places like California so they can virtue signal how great they are as parents, that they can help their kids. But I was thinking, like, if I was a 15-year-old and I identified as a bodybuilder, and I was depressed that I didn't have big muscles, should I be prescribed steroids? Now, what is the difference, really? What is the difference? I identify as female. I want estrogen. I'm 15. I identify as a bodybuilder with big muscles. I am sad. Please give me steroids or I'll kill myself. Do you see the similarities, or am I straw manning? I don't think I'm straw manning, because I think the whole point of hormone treatments is to help trans kids feel better, right? Like, what's the point of giving hormones to trans kids? So they can have more of a match between what they think and what they are, or what they were born with, right? But if someone identifies as a bodybuilder, yet they have no muscles or they're skinny, what's the difference? You're helping them. Don't we want to help our children? Like, there's a lot of skinny males in high school right now who are sad, maybe depressed, maybe even considering suicide. Do you want this blood on your hands by not giving them steroids? Like, how insensitive are you if you're saying, no, Doug, we shouldn't do this? Steroids for young kids is not good. What's wrong with you? Don't you care? Where's your empathy? I actually don't think I am strawmanning. I think what I did is take an example of one that where clearly the majority of the world would say, no, that's wrong. But yet it'd be very tough for you to say, why is that different than a trans kid? Someone tell me, why is it different? Big difference. The body politic doesn't push one of those. Well, yeah, of course, Franklin. I'm giving a hypothetical here. And I've never heard anyone else give this hypothetical, this specific one. But what is the difference between a kid who identifies as a bodybuilder and wants hormone treatment, steroids, so they're not depressed? What if they have a dysmorphia where they, in their mind, they view themselves as but reality is that they're Someone explain to me the difference. Someone explain to me exactly how I'm strawmanning. Identifying as a bodybuilder is not gender identification. Huge difference. Well, Sherry, identifying as a trans person is not the same as identifying as a bodybuilder. It's a huge difference. I could just flip it. Why is gender identification more important to the well-being, the mental well-being of this 15-year-old boy who's skinny? Why are you being biased towards the trans and not the poor 15-year-old boy? Where's your compassion? Where's your empathy? This 15-year-old boy has is suffering from a disorder called bodybuilding dysmorphia. I bet you there's no one here who can actually put their finger on it and tell me the difference. If a kid wants muscles, he can just work out. This kid has worked out, an atheist. This 15-year-old has worked out every day and he's making no gains. It's because of his genetics. He can't do it. It's his genetics. He was born this way. He was born a skinny kid, but he identifies as a muscle guy and he's depressed because of it. Where is your empathy? We as a society should not only give him steroids, but we should pay for it. Someone put their finger on why I'm wrong here. Someone tell me exactly why I'm strawmanning and just say, well, because it's different. You guys can't do it, can you? You liberal, woke atheists. You can't do it. The only thing you can say is, well, it's different. It's just different. Well, yeah, it's different. It's bodybuilding instead of gender. Yeah, it's different. But in both cases, we got depressed teenagers. In both cases, we have dysmorphia. And in both cases, there's a solution proposed, and that is drugs. Everyone has gender identity. It's fundamental to everyone. Not so optional sports and other recreational identities. I'm not just talking about a sport, but I'm talking about of who you are as a person. We got this skinny little runt of a guy, a 15-year-old, who's depressed because he's skinny. He's depressed because he's skinny. And when he dreams at night, he dreams of being big and strong. He views himself this way as the true him. Oh, Sherry says there is a difference. Doesn't mean both don't have problems. Doesn't mean what's the difference? Well, the difference is bodybuilding and gender, but why not treat the 15-year-old skinny kid with steroids? Where's your empathy? Where's your love? Where's your compassion? Tell me why we should not give steroids to a 15-year-old boy who's skinny so he can have more muscles, so he can be less depressed. Again, I do not understand why some of you woke atheists have no empathy for this 15-year-old skinny kid. Couldn't we seriously help him? Like, we have strong scientific evidence that giving steroids can help build muscle mass. Don't you guys want to follow the science? And I bet you anything, even though the hypothetical I put up was very rare, but I bet you actually it probably isn't rare. I bet you there's a lot of skinny teenage kids who wish they had muscles. And I bet you they would become less depressed if you gave them what they wanted. They want to have muscles. If you give them muscles through steroids, they'll be less depressed. Just like a trans person born a boy, if you give them what they want, estrogen, they'll be less depressed. I'm not sure there's anything wrong with that. Whoa. Well, at least you're consistent. If a woke atheist said that, well, okay, yeah, give steroids to the 15-year-old boy. We're talking about giving drugs to teenagers so they feel less depressed. I think you have to admit to me that that's the same in both cases. Shamas Crawford, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this is bad. We shouldn't give steroids to kids. Just like we shouldn't give estrogen and testosterone to change someone's biology. Now, if they want to pay for it for themselves as an adult, I'm a freer market type guy. Go for it. My personal opinion is you should wait till the age of 28 when your prefrontal cortex is fully developed. And if you still have this dysmorphia, this mental disorder, then go ahead. But number one, give yourself some time, become an adult, see if it still persists. Number two, don't ask society to pay for it. Okay. Who's Kevin O'Leary? My whale friend Ray sent this to me, and he thought it was a good example of a cordial conversation. I watched the whole thing, and I actually think it made me feel ashamed, because I think I have exhibited some of the same behaviors as this interviewer, and I didn't like it. This interviewer on The Daily Show, what's his name? I don't know his name. He's funny. I think I'm funny sometimes. But he interrupted so many times, and I think I've done that as well. But there's many times where I've just sat back and let people talk and talk and talk as well. So when you're an interviewer and you got a bloviator as a guest, it's really hard to find that line of when to step in and when to just let people talk. It's a gift from God, really, if you can do it well. So this is on that whole FTX crypto debacle. And yeah, well, you guys can... Oops.